I think I found a love that's gonna wreck me. Walls are coming down, I'm getting set free. And all these lies that I've believed come crashing down when I'm on my knees. I think I found a love that's gonna wreck me. Break me down and build me up again. Come rushing in, you are the air I'm breathing. Break me down and build me up again. You won't stop, you're not done with me yet. 'Cause you're not done with me yet.
It's so good to have you join us today. We're starting a brand new series, and I want to ask you a question before we jump in. Have you ever had someone ask you a question that was so personal, that was so private, so completely not their business, that you couldn't help but respond with, "That's none of your business"? Maybe someone you barely know asked about someone you fancy. None of their business, right? Or maybe you overheard someone sharing a rumour that's been going around. None of their business. Maybe your parents wanted to read your text messages, or a sibling snooped in your DMs. That definitely feels like none of their business. For the next 4 weeks, we're actually going to talk about something that might make you want to say, "Whoa, that is none of your business." And honestly, it's something that shouldn't be everybody's business. It's something that's personal, it's private, and it's important for you to choose carefully who you talk to about it. But while it shouldn't be everybody's business, it should definitely be somebody's business. Because it has the potential to be a really big deal in your life. That topic is sex. Yes, that's right, for the next 4 weeks at church, we're going to be talking about sex and relationships. And yes, it's probably going to make you laugh. It might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's also definitely going to make you think. And the good news is that any of those responses are totally okay and totally normal. But let's just be honest here. The topic of sex can be pretty awkward, and it almost feels like it should be off limits, like it should be nobody's business. And it definitely feels like something that we shouldn't talk about at church. But here's the deal. I actually think church is the best place to talk about sex. I think church should be the safest place in the world to talk about anything, including the topic of sex. Why? Because teenagers, you are definitely talking about, thinking about, joking about, maybe even experimenting with sexual things. And we want to give you a safe place to talk about and ask questions. Because like I said, it doesn't have to be everybody's business. But we do want it to be somebody's business. Someone who's older, wiser, and someone that you trust. But here's the deal. We're all in a different place. Some of you may have only ever thought about it in that awkward lesson at school where they tell you about how babies are made. Some of you might be grossed out or super uncomfortable with the idea of it. And yet some of you may think about it, talk about it, and maybe even doing it. And we want to talk about it today because no matter where you are in all of those things, it's an important conversation. Now, maybe you're sitting here thinking, okay, so we're talking about sex at church. Here comes the part where they tell me it's bad and sinful and I need to stay far away from it. If you're thinking that right now, I totally understand why. When it comes to talking about sex, a lot of people usually do one of two things. Firstly, they either ignore the conversations at all cost, which isn't healthy or helpful. And two, they talk about it in a way that makes it seem negative or bad, a way that makes it seem like you should feel awful for even wondering about it. Here's what I know to be true about sex. God created it. And God made sex a good thing, which means He's not embarrassed, uncomfortable, or grossed out by it. It also means when we have these thoughts, desires, and questions, we're totally normal. It's part of being human. Because that's how God made us. Simply put, sex is something He designed for us to experience. But here's where it gets a bit confusing. If sex is designed by God and it's good, why do we hear so many negative things about it? Why do we feel weird or ashamed or scared to even talk about it or ask about it sometimes? Why does it make us uncomfortable? And what is the right way to talk about it, think about it, and treat it? Fortunately, the Bible actually has a lot to say about sex. The first time that we get an idea of God's attitude towards sex is at the very beginning of the Bible in the book of Genesis. And there we read about the beginning, the creation of all things. And it says, "So God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God He created them, male and female He created them. Then He blessed them and said, 'Be fruitful and multiply.'" Confused? Let me break it down for you. The word sex isn't actually written in this passage, but it's exactly what's being talked about here. When God told the people He created to be fruitful and multiply, He was telling them to go and have babies. And so here's what we can learn from this passage. God invented sex, and it was his plan from the very beginning. There was nothing wrong or bad or shameful about it. It wasn't sinful, it wasn't gross. It was part of God's plan. In fact, as we read through the book of Genesis, we find an even bigger picture of God's plan for sex. Let's take a look. Genesis 2, verse 25 says, Adam and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. They felt no shame. Now, we might feel awkward reading that, but at the time, Adam and Eve felt no shame about their bodies. They weren't embarrassed at all. That's not really how we think about it today, is it? So what happened? What changed? Well, a lot. There was a fruit on a tree that God told Adam and Eve not to eat, but they ate it anyway, and when they did, the way they saw themselves and each other changed. And the book of Genesis says that Adam and Eve's eyes were opened. They realized they were naked and they covered themselves up, just like that, the way we view our bodies changed. And it's never been the same since. But that doesn't mean that we're all doomed when it comes to how we view our bodies and sex. It just means that we're always going to have to fight things like shame and feeling uncomfortable. And it also means that when we do things that don't follow the plan God has for us, there can be some unintended consequences that aren't so great. And here's the thing. We said that God created sex and it's good. That means that when we use it in the way that God planned, it's a positive thing. Within the commitment of marriage, sex isn't shameful or wrong. It's how God planned for it to be. Think of it like this. How many of you have a fireplace in your house? Or maybe you came to youth when we had a fire pit outside. When fire is in a fireplace or a fire pit, it's contained. It's safe. We know how to take care of it and we know what it's supposed to do. It provides good things like the right amount of warmth from the cold, a way to make the perfect s'mores, and a source of light when the power goes out. Sounds pretty great, right? Well, it is. Fires are wonderful things and I love them when they're contained in the fireplace in your home or in a fire pit. That's how it's designed to be used. But what about when a fire starts accidentally in your house? It can get big and dangerous really, really fast. And when a fire rages throughout your home, it is totally unpredictable. And it has the potential to leave damage and pain in its wake. It causes so many unintentional negative results when it goes outside of the safety of the fireplace, when it stops being used in the way it was intended. And outside of God's plan, sex can impact your life in the same way. It can get out of control really quickly, totally unpredictable. It can cause a lot of pain for yourself and others, both immediately and in the future, and it can result in outcomes that you didn't imagine or intend. It was created for two people who have committed to live their lives together in the context of marriage. Let's read one more passage from Genesis to get a little more insight into how God created sex. This explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife. The two are united into one. Here we read that sex is powerful, so powerful that a man is to be joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. It means the joining of two lives physically and emotionally. It means creating a connection that affects every part of you and every part of the other person. So basically, when you have sex, you're joining yourself to another person in every way possible, and that's pretty powerful. You see, there's power when two people join together as one, and that power can either be really good or it can result in a really negative consequence, and it all depends on the context. When it occurs within the right context, it has incredible power to be good, just like the fire in the fireplace when we talked about earlier. But when it occurs outside of God's design, it has incredible power to negatively impact you and others, just like the fire that rages throughout your home. You see, sex is good and sex is powerful. Maybe you know that. Maybe you've experienced the physical, spiritual, and emotional hurt that it can cause. Maybe you've seen it ruin a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Maybe you've seen it damage relationships with friends or between parents, or even you and God. Now, maybe you haven't experienced the emotional, physical, and spiritual effects that sex outside of marriage can potentially cause. Maybe you or your friends are experimenting with sex and different things outside of God's design, but those consequences you hear everyone talk about haven't really happened. You may not have seen the negative impact yet, but trust me when I tell you that the potential is there. Sex is so powerful that even when you can't see the consequences of using it outside of God's plan, even if you don't see them for years to come, they're still there. The emotional, spiritual, and physical impact can last a lifetime. And those hurts can affect your current and future relationships in a lot of negative ways. They have the potential to bring pain into the most important relationships in your life. But if this is something you've done, if you're sitting here thinking, I'm doomed or judged, please know that that is not the case. We always have a chance to rewrite our story, to choose a different way of life. God loves you no matter what you've done, no matter what's happened, what you think, what you say. He just wants the best for you. Pain isn't what God wants for you in any area of your life, but especially when it comes to sex. God has a plan for your life, and a good plan, and when we trust in and follow his design for all things in our lives, we can know that we're using the things he created for us in the best possible way. To help you start navigating this topic in a way that's good for you, here are 2 things that I hope that you'll think about doing this week. The first one, find someone to talk to about sex. We want each of you to develop a healthy attitude towards sex. We want to give you a place to talk about it with people who care about you. It's not a conversation for you to have with everybody. But remember, when it comes to your life, sex isn't everybody's business, but it needs to be somebody's business. So find someone who loves you, who wants the best for you, and who will encourage you towards that in this particular area of your life. Someone like your small group leader, your cruise leaders, or maybe a parent or an older sibling. And secondly, be brave enough to start talking. I understand that talking about sex isn't easy. No matter where you're coming from on this topic, it probably feels like the conversation will be awkward, uncomfortable, or embarrassing. But when you take the brave step to talk to the right person, it doesn't have to be. Once you identify someone who can give you guidance and wisdom and who isn't afraid of your honesty or your questions, start talking to them. Will it be awkward sometimes? Probably. Will it make you laugh? Probably. All of that is okay. But my hope is that you'll move past the awkwardness because this conversation is so important. Believe it or not, we want you to experience everything that God has created and designed for you to enjoy when it comes to this topic. But we also know that in order to live the life that God has for each of us, we've got to pay attention to what God says about it. We have to remember that sex is good and sex is powerful. Well, we've made it through the first session today. Thank you so much for sticking with me through such an important topic. We're going to jump into our small groups now, and we're going to give you a chance to ask questions. Now, we're not going to answer them today, but in a couple of weeks, we're going to get some special guests in to share with you and for them to answer some of your questions that you have. So be really honest. Ask the difficult questions, and they'll try and answer them as best they can. So we'll see you on Zoom in a couple of minutes.
How could you love me with the mess I've made? I'm so unworthy to deserve your grace. Oh, but you drew me closer than I've been before. And though I tremble deep in my soul, I hear you tell me that I don't need to worry about what I bring to you. Jesus, you're not afraid of my failure. You're not ashamed of my heart, no matter the brokenness I hold. I know that I stand before you, Lord. There's nothing to hide, nothing to hide, nothing to hide. Oh, and my heart